is because I prefer to do that with highly figured wood, or wood that has really outstanding grain. The reason for that is if you go for a thin stem, you lose a lot of the character, because you could actually turn away the spalting and just have it on the bowl and the foot. So that's the rationale behind doing it the way I'm doing it. And I think we've agreed that you can hear when I've got my respirator going. So that will be going on, because spalted wood obviously is not the best. So that's going on now. And hopefully you can still hear what I'm saying. So the first thing to do is to turn it to round. I've got it between centres. I found the centre. So I'll be using a spindle roughing gouge and start the lathe off at 0. Make sure nothing is catching. And because it's a spindle, you can turn it quite a high RPM, because it's square and balanced. So just on 1000 RPM, and just turn it to round, anchor, rub the bevel, lift the handle, and just go across. Now when you're doing this, or anything on a straight line if you like, for the newer turners, don't use your arms, use your body. So move your body, always try and keep we'll go a bit heavier now, because I just wanted to show you what I do. And the reason I use step centres is because they're spring loaded. And if you get a digging, it just virtually stops, and then you just tighten at the tailstock and start again. I'm actually going to turn this up a bit. Right, so we're doing 1400 revs now, and you can hear it, a much better cut. Now, as I keep saying, you should always turn the lathe off when you move the tool rest, but I think we all agree we don't all do that, and you mustn't put the tool to the wood before you have it on the tool rest, because that is not a good thing to happen. But the reason I turned it up is because I want to do it a bit quicker, and that means I can go across. We've got a little bit there. I think we're nearly there now. Yeah, that'll do. And just tighten up a bit more. Okay, so now she's round, and the next thing to do is to form a tenon. And form a tenon and put it into the jaws, and then we can start shaping. So again, I'm using a parting tool, which is actually a badan, which I've changed to a parting tool. So again, you just rub the bevel, start to go in, now I know with this one, what I need is 56 mil. And again, for the newer turner, it's always important to make sure you have a square shoulder. This is not a dovetail, because the medium gripper jaws from Axminster are a straight profile jaw with serrations on the inside, and I've used this type of jaw for a long time. Now we just straighten up the end there. That's not essential, but it just makes it look a bit neater from the camera. And don't touch go down a little bit more. And get the calipers and just check. It's got a little bit more to go, because we like to get it as accurate as possible, because then the jaws are giving you a perfect circle and giving you the best holding. There we go. That should do. So now just remove the tailstock and take out the centre, the drive, step drive, slot in the dove. Now what I do before I tighten up, I bring up the tailstock again just to centre it. And that means then a little bit of pressure, and that just makes it as central as we can. Just spin them up to check. Not bad at all. Okay, so we've got the blank turned to round. Now the next thing is to give it a basic shape. Now because it's going to be stubby, it's not a long goblet with a thin stem. I don't want a massive bowl here, because the stem is going to come out in a concave fashion to the base. And the reason for that is, as I explained, that will give us more view of the figure of the wood. So before I start hollowing, I'm just going to do a basic shape, and I work on, as you most probably know by now, on thirds, basically, very roughly, a third and then 2/3 for the stem and the base. So again, I'm using a 1/2 inch spindle gouge here. You could use a 3/8 bowl gouge if you wish. I'm going to be starting possibly just around here, so that's going to be maybe a bit lower than that. I'm just doing a very rough shape. There'll be nothing too fancy, and I want this shape to be quite chunky, not fragile in any way. Just take the tool rest up a smidge. There we go. Now remember, it's a chalice, not a goblet, so we're not looking at a delicate shape. All I'm doing here is trying to get it somewhere in the region of what I'm looking for. It will go down further here, and just get rid of that little humpy bit there, and the same here. Just light cuts, lift the handle, turn your flute the direction you want to go, and this is a little bit there which isn't actually round yet. Yeah, there's a little bit of a flat spot there, so we'll go a bit smaller on diameter. But keep the shape the same. I want it quite squat. Now you see, it doesn't matter that that's there, because it's also Good practice. It's got rid of it now, or will do. Now that might look flat to you, but wait until it's finished, because that's going to come down to here and it'll all look good, he says, hopefully. Now you want to keep meat at the back here because you're hollowing, but you don't need to keep this much meat. So just remove wood. You're going to remove wood as you go, just to give you some room to work. Yeah, that's about right, I think. It's obviously got to go down quite a bit more here, but don't worry about that. It's a lovely figure on this wood. This wood was actually, there's the last piece that was given to me by Mr. Stratton when he visited. Okay, so I'm going to remove the tailstock now, and don't forget to take out the live centre, because believe me, that can hurt. So take away the tailstock. Now we're going to be hollowing. Now there are several methods, loads of methods of hollowing, and everybody has their preference. You can use hollowing, specific hollowing tools like the mini hollower that Simon Hope does, or similar. You can use a bowl gouge, 3/8 bowl gouge, 3/8 spindle gouge, 1/2 inch spindle gouge. You can do pull cuts, you can do push cuts, so it's really up to you. One thing I do like to do is to get rid of the slow moving wood, and to do that I don't bother using a drill on a goblet. So if you put your 3/8 spindle gouge and have it at centre height, and what you do is plunge in, and this is the method I like to do. Now don't forget, we've got to straighten that front up, but don't worry about that now. Now we're looking at about that distance, so all you do is get the tool in the middle, keep the flute uppermost and press in, and just remove the swarf and press in, remove and press in. And stop and see, and we're there, a little bit more to go, a bit more speed, and just press it in, keep it on the horizontal and press in. There we go, job done. Now we'll just straighten off the, just true up the front here a bit, just like you would on a bowl blank if you like. Drop the rest a little bit there. I'm going to use the 1/2 inch spindle gouge again and just do a pull cut. Let's have a bit more speed there. I could have done this before, but it's not important really. It just looks better, doesn't it, when it's like that. Now, you look at this now and think, right, okay, what sort of width walls do I want? Well, because it's going to be a chunky chalice, we don't want thin walls. So again, you have to, if I change to this tailstock end, you've got the choice now of deciding what size you want. Now what I tend to do is to just get a parting tool and have a look and just see. And I think for this sort of a size, chunky bit, we talk about there. It's not definitive, but about that looks good to me. Everybody will have their own opinions on what looks good and what doesn't. Now, as I said, you can either back hollow, which is hollowing this way, or you can push cut. Now there's a bit of an undercut there, but that's not a problem. We can either do that with the gouge or indeed with the negative rake when you're finishing off. Just get that bowl in, up to you. So we'll do a little bit of push cut, if you like, basically like a bowl. And all you're doing is doing the same sort of cuts that you would if you've got a bowl. Or you can do a pull cut, which is using just to the left of the nose, and you're doing a from the middle out. Don't go right to the edge for now. Or, as I said, we could use a little carbide mini hollower. I'm only showing you these different ways because there is no definitive way of doing it, and you can just take away what you want with that. I don't actually have, when I think about it, a preference. What I do when I'm hollowing, I'll use various methods because it's all practice and it's enjoyable. I think overall that for moving wood, the back hollowing method is my favoured method, what I'm doing now. But of course it doesn't leave the best surface. But it does allow you to move quite a bit of wood quite quickly. We'll stop and have a look. Not far to go now. In fact, we're virtually on the depth. We could go a bit deeper than that actually. Anyway, let's just so what we're doing now is feeling the inside. That's got a little ridge there. Now you can see I've already undercut a little bit here, and that's the good thing about the back hollowing method. It's quite easy to do that. Yeah, that's not too bad. And a bit of a rump there. And all we're doing here now is just fine tuning basically with the undercut. Now I must admit, I quite often am told off if I do it in videos without thinking. I tend to put my fingers in before it's stopped. There you go. Now with an undercut, when you're back hollowing, you've got to be careful, again for the newer turner, because as you're coming up here, you could actually catch your wing on there. Okay, but the reason I'm using this and not the hollowing tool is because not everybody's got a hollowing tool, and it is possible to do an undercut to a point with your gouge. It's nice light cuts now. Now you can hear that scrape, and what it means, I'm falling off the cut. Now I've got to try and keep, I would normally have the headstock swung around as well, which is a great excuse, but it's true. Now you can see I've gone quite a way in there now, and I haven't got far to go now. So you just try and keep the gouge on the same plane throughout the cut. Don't drop the handle, don't lift it. If you do, you'll have to alter to get back to where you want to be, to get the cut you're looking for. That's nearly there now. Now what I have here, which is one of my favoured tools, is a little 1/4 inch brown nose scraper before, and I've just put that to a 30-30 negative rake, and then that, when on centre, gives me a nice smooth finish. But you have to come over here obviously because you're undercutting, so that just gives a nice finish inside. Right round there, and that's fairly good. I could actually go a little bit further down there, so excuse me a minute. I shall use just a little bit at the bottom. It's always difficult with the cameras. Yes, I'm always full of excuses. That's better. I've got a little, tiny little dimple there, we'll get rid of that. Okay, I think that's done it. Yes, it has. Okay, so I'm quite pleased with that. Now I was asked on the last couple, over the last couple, to finish a piece as opposed to not. So what I'm going to do now is sand the inside. And because it's a hefty goblet, we don't have to worry too much about flexing and stability. What are we doing for time? Oh, it's not too bad at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put the extractor on, and I'm going to sand the inside. I'm going to turn the speed down to about 700-800, and starting off with 120 just by hand. Move that back a bit so you can see a bit better. How's that? That's okay. Now one thing especially for the newer turner, when you're sanding, always keep the same pressure throughout the grits, okay? And the reason for that is that if you alter the pressures, and psychologically you tend to alter the pressure when you're getting to the finer grits, you aren't going to remove the scratches from the coarser grits. That's 120, 180. Now normally I would put DNA or methylated spirits here in the UK to get rid of the dust after each grit, and all that does is get the grit out of all the pores. So what I'll do, I'll just give it a quick blast of air. There we go. And now we go to 240. This is nice, not too deep. I mean, the finish obviously is not going to be as good as it would be if I was either selling or doing it for a present, but it's the method. And I did say that I would do a finished goblet, so hopefully we'll get through it in next to no time. Okay, so that has been sanded down to 240. And I'm going to go through the method on the inside of the bowl and we'll see how time allows. So the next thing I do is to put, again, for the newer turners and people who have asked me, my finishing regime. So the next thing is sanding sealer. Okay, and sanding sealer does as the name suggests, it seals the wood and prepares it ready for your finish, or in this case I'll be using Yorkshire grit. And what Yorkshire grit does, as you've noticed, I've only just sanded down to 240. Well, normally I would sand up to 600, and what happens there is you're creating finer dust. Now it doesn't bother me much because I've got a fairly decent extraction system, and I always wear a respirator, powered respirator, and I've got an air filtration system in the ceiling, but not everybody has that. So it's the finer grits that cause the damage and cause the problems to your lungs. So you only have to sand to 240, and then Yorkshire grit is an abrasive paste, and what it does, and I'm not doing this because Glyn's in, I'd intended to do this anyway. What it does, it takes away the finer dust particles because you're not sanding any finer than 240. And the main problem, I think, with people who use Yorkshire grit, and even when they use a wax, is they don't give enough time for it just to go off and before you do your next part of the process. Now in this case, you must let the sanding sealer dry. It's not essential to have sanding sealer, but it does help the whole process. So now you don't need to be frugal, but you don't want to put too much on. So you just put it on over the surface. Okay, using the same part of the paper towel. I always start off at about 500-600 revs just to begin with, and we'll go through the whole process. And people said, oh, it takes more time. It doesn't. If you go through all the grits and you do it properly, it takes actually less to use Yorkshire grit, but then, you know, each to his own. Now the whole point of Yorkshire grit, as I say, is to take the place of the finer sanding grits from 240 up. And what it does, it breaks it down as you're going, and the rotten stone that's in there, that breaks down, and it's sanding your surface, if you like, but it also leaves a nice finish at the end, ready to put whatever finish, your wax of choice or whatever, on top. Now you can see there we've got residue because it's the same bit I actually applied it with. So what we do now is get a fresh bit of towel and keep doing it, keep doing the process, turn the speed up a bit now, and the goal is to, number one, make it feeling nice and smooth, but you have no residue on your paper towel either. Now there's a little bit there that the camera picks it up. Just put it there, look, a little bit left on there. So we keep going. I can already feel it starting to get smooth, which means it's starting to do its job. And just change for a fresh bit of paper towel and keep doing that until, as I say, there's no residue. Now if you follow those instructions, and they're not mine because I'm clever, they're the instructions that the manufacturer suggest, and I've been using it for quite a few years now, and that is the best way to achieve the results you want to achieve. very little coming off now, and I can feel it's almost done, as they say. The chicken is ready to take it out of the oven. And as you can see there now, look, there is absolutely no residue there. It's feeling lovely and smooth in there. And you must bear in mind, I've got a figure on that, it's gorgeous, isn't it? You must bear in mind as well, this is a Spalted Beech, so there is a little bit of punkiness on it, but not too bad. So let that dry, and when I say dry, give it a couple of minutes before you apply your wax. And that is another slight error when people rush it, because it doesn't give Yorkshire Grit a time just to get rid of all the little bits and pieces that might be left in there, and it's nice and smooth and dry, and then you can apply your wax. In this case it's going to be Hampshire sheen, but it could be any wax, whatever wax you use. The same caveat applies. And again with waxes, and I'm not going to go into the regime take too long over it because you'll all fall asleep, but believe me, when you're doing something to finish properly, as I may say, it's worth taking the time. So I don't put a lot of wax on. Less is more in this case, not with this wax, with any wax. If you want a higher shine, you let it cure off 20 minutes or something like that, and then put another coat on and rinse and repeat until you get the desired shine. Now I turn the lathe on a bit just to work it into the piece and get it as evenly as I can so you don't get streaks. Not so prevalent on a piece like this, especially on the inside, and because it's spalted. But if you've got a relatively plain piece of wood, believe you me, the streaks will show, as will the sanding scratches on the outside. And I'll tell you what I do when we get there to reduce or negate that happening. Okay, so I'd leave that now for a couple of minutes, and you can see my ugly face again just for a second, and all we'll do then is a couple of minutes time and I'll buff that up, and hopefully any questions that have been asked. Oliver's wood turning, good evening. Ed, how are you? Nice to see you. I've missed loads of people joining, I'm sure, because there's about 100 more people here now than when I started turning. But hopefully any questions you may have had have been answered by people in the chat. Mark Pritchard, Mike, what do you think of M42 HS tools, and have you found a degree of a negative rake that you like? As far as M42, I've never used them. I use Crown Cryo. I can't really comment on M42. Mr. Oliver might be able to if he's still here, because he sells tools and he'll know more about it than me. And as far as thank you very much, Brian, Mr. Stapley, very kind of you. As far as the negative rake is concerned, again, it's a personal choice. I found 35 works brilliantly for me and my turning style. I can't recommend that enough. Everybody else will have different. All my scrapers have got a slight relief on it anyway. Hi Bob Osterberg, good evening, how are you? Bust West, am I using the Axminster SK114? Yes, I am. Christina Sundvist, good evening. Glad to see you. Well, you've only dropped in, that's brilliant. Always a pleasure to see you. Okay, that's gone. That's nice now, that's ready. So we'll go back to the tailstock camera, get rid of that. See, and it's just a case now of turning up to about 1200 RPM or whatever. No great pressure needed when you're burnishing your wax. As I say, hopefully it'll show on the outside better than the inside, but you can see the shine there, and that's the inside finished. Now people say to me, why do I do the inside of a goblet first and work my way down? Well, normally if it's a goblet with a thinner stem, the reason I do that is purely because of stability. So that's finished with now. Now it would be overkill, I think, with this, but I still do it. If you can bring the tailstock up in any turning, do it, because it's that little bit of extra. I might lose the ball actually. No, I'll be all right. It gives that little bit of extra stability, and I don't see the point in not using something if you can to make it that little bit, not necessarily safer, but a little bit more secure. And having the tailstock up, especially, let's go to the overhead now, if you've got a long goblet, however long it is, obviously not massive pressure, but you're just giving that bit of stability, and you're not working out here somewhere on the goblet, turning or whatever, with it unsupported. So as soon as you get the inside of the bowl finished, you can bring up your tailstock with a tennis ball or anything, just to give that little bit of extra stability. And as I say, it's not really necessary for a piece of this nature, but if you get into the habit, what is the problem? You know, I don't think there is a problem in trying to get a habit. And I will say here, there's lots of bug marks on this, and there's quite a bit of punkiness as well. But again, we're not really worried about a superb finish. We're looking at the methodology. Okay, so respirator back on. Arm myself again with the 1/2 inch bowl gouge. So we've basically, again, on a thin stem goblet, I would have sanded the bowl. I would have finished the bowl to the shape that I wanted, and I would have sanded and finished it, so I can work my way down the narrow stem. Here it's not that important because we've got a lot of bulk, and we will have bulk in the end as well. So what I'm going to do now is just get rid of a bit of wood here, turning at about 1600 revs, make sure everything's locked down. Again, I'm using a 1/2 inch spindle gouge at the moment, and just want to get rid of wood. Nice and easy, no rush. Lift the handle, keep that bevel in contact with the wood. Now we can start to think about what sort of a shape we're going to end up with, but it's got to go down a fair bit more, so we need to move this wood away to give me room to work. Actually, the tool rest could go off a little tiny bit there. There we go. Now, although I'm taking fairly big cuts, I'm putting no pressure and letting the wood come on to the tool to remove the wood. Now I shall remove it from this side, which will then give me room to work. Now what I'm going to want to do here is bring the bowl round a bit. So if I get rid of this little bit of wood here, not to make such a big cut, and a little bit more here, I'm still using the 1/2 inch spindle gouge, and what I can do now is pick the cut up here, lift the handle until I get a cut, lift the handle, keep bevel contact, and just move down. And just pick that little bit there, pick the cut up where that's just missed a bit. I've got a bit of a bump there. Very fine cuts. Work my way to the middle. Yeah, that's okay. I'm not really too worried up here. There's a bit of a square there because that will sand out, but you know, it's not the end of the world if you don't get it to the perfect shape off the tool, but it is nice when you do. What we want to do there is just take that little corner off, if you like. So just light cuts, just to blend that in with the shape we're looking for. Lift the handle, and keep that bevel in contact. to there. That's not too bad. Yeah. Okay, let's work on the shape down here now. So I'm going to move some wood from here. Now I like to have a little bit of a detail at the base of the goblet. Now, because we're not working with fine, delicate piece, we can move quite a bit of this wood away, and all this is doing is getting rid of excess wood. Almost, if you like a Christmas tree, because that's the shape I'll be going for in the end, is a concave stem working its way from the widest point at the base up to the bowl of the goblet. Okay, so let's get this sorted out at this end now. Let's start to get some sort of a shape. We don't want to be too thin or too small a diameter at the top of the stem, because I keep saying this is a chunky piece. Keep looking. Now what I'm going to do is change to my spindle gauge, the 3/8 spindle gauge, because I want to get a bit finer. So this is 45 degrees, this one. And then to do the little bit of detail there, I'm going to use a 30-degree detail gauge, because that means I'll turn this lathe off again for the newer turner, because I want to get in there like so and just sort of make a bit of a detail there. Well, if I've got my 45, the wings are going to catch on the bottom of the bowl, and I don't want that. So this gives me the opportunity to be a little bit more, you can see I'm going in the direction of where the bevel is pointing, so I want to go down to the middle there. So just pick up the cut nice and gently and work your way down the fillet to the base, and then you can clean that up again, you won't be fouling the top of the stem, just to bring that in nicely there. Take a look, and that's quite a nice neat cut. So I might make that a bit smaller as I go down, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it looks. I've lost my half-inch spindle gauge now. Okay, so now we can start looking. You might say this is a bit far away here, which it is, so change to a smaller tool rest if you have one. If not, just be extra careful. Put my sleeve in there for the smaller post diameter. And again, people say, do I prefer these rests? Not really. It's just, it allows me, when I'm not working on long pieces, it allows me to get a little bit closer to the stem. Just check everything's free. And now we're going to be working on the shape of the stem. Nice and easy. Now I'm going to start from how far down do I want it. I don't want it all the way down there because it's not keep lifting the handle, keep that bevel in contact with the wood, working down to the centre. now. Okay, I think we can go a bit further down here. I'm just looking. I shall just get my trusty parting tool. You can see where we're going. This is going to be curving in. I think don't want to go much further than there, actually, I would think. Otherwise it's going to be too long for what I'm trying to achieve. So that's going to be the base. So what I want to do now is to get my concave profile on the stem. Starting from here. Seeing how it looks. And just take yeah. Now when you get nearer to the end, you could do some fine adjustment at the end. It's basically trying to get a feel what it's going to look like when you've finished. It's got to be just about. Just fine adjustments now. I got to stop and look at it. By no means finished yet, but I'm just looking at the proportions. Now forget the fact it's not finished yet, but you can see hopefully what I mean. When you've got a highly figured piece of wood like this, the more wood you leave on, the more visual effect that grain will give. This particular spalting I don't think would lose a lot, but if you went down to a 4 or 5 millimeter stem there, you would lose a lot of the visual presence, in my opinion anyway, of the spalting. So what I'm going to do now is just refine this shape. I might start it a bit further down, but I don't want the base to be too thin either, because otherwise it'll be out of proportion. But as I keep saying, a lot of this is personal preference. Not everybody will agree. Yeah, I keep looking at it. It's got a little lump there. So pick up the cut, light cut, and fall off the cut almost. A little bit there, and you can follow that round to get it to the exactly what you want. There's a little bump there. Pick up the cut where the bump starts. Just take that off, and then we can come round and hopefully just go in a little bit more here, come out and fall off the cut to bring that curve round. And just on the top here it's a little bit knobbly, so just sort of tiny little bit off there just to make it as smooth as possible. And then we can just And down there. We'll stop and have a look and see where it needs any fine tuning. It's got quite a nice shape to it, I quite like that. It is chunky, I admit, not the usual sort of things that I do. Well, I do them, but not a lot on film. Yeah, I'm going to leave that for a minute and we'll have a little chat. It's only been not an hour yet, which is good, because all we have to do there is to do some just fine tuning possibly, but sanding will get rid of any little ripples we got there, but the least sanding you have to do, the better. And I must be honest, although it's very highly spalted, there's a few pieces here where you've got bug holes, etc., but that's all character in my opinion. You see, if I'd gone down to here, I just think personally it would have been too long for the type of effect I was trying to get. And normally I would go in quite a bit sharper here, but I quite like the idea that you've got the extra bit of spalting showing in that little feature there. Okay, let's go back to the face, because we're virtually done the shape, if you like. It's just the finishing and what have you. So I'm going to have a quick drink. Again, anybody that I've missed joining, welcome, and thank you very much for joining me this evening, and everybody in the chat, of course. Adrian Olsen, yes, it is absolutely superb bit of wood, it really is. And again, I have to thank Mr. Stratton for that. It's the last piece of that. I have obtained some more spalted beech. I do love it. Mike, what? Mark Pritchard, what is your next lathe? I haven't got one. I've actually got the lathe that there's no way. I might extend it, but there's no way I'll change the lathe. I absolutely love it. Sorry about that, Mark. I know you don't believe me. It's a stunning bit of wood, Mark. Yes, it is. It's a shame the turning is not as stunning, but there you go. Douglas Mungham, hi, how are you? Oh, Wayne Bigfoot, how are you, mate? There's so many Waynes about. Common old name, isn't it? Lundy Turning, hello, how are you? Thank you, Peter. To who dries that? That's very kind of you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We haven't finished yet, mind. Don't go yet. Oh, Leona. Hello, Leona. Leona, you're very lucky. Leona is saying she's got nothing else but spalted beech. You should be so, we should be so lucky. Good grief. Ah, dear. If I was Tommy, hi, how are you? Dave Shorten, Mike, can I ask where you got the tool rest sleeve? The reason I got the sleeve for the tool rest is, well, I got it from Simon Hope. It came with the lathe, or I got it for the lathe, because the tool post on this lathe is 30mm, and all my other tool rests are 25.4, so I had to have a reducer. Lenny, good evening, how are you? Are you well, sir? I noticed you were on about 2 hours before I was. I was setting up before I went in for something to eat and come back out, and you were on here, so good evening and thank you. Deborah, is Beech easy to work with? Would you recommend it for a beginner? If Beech is at this stage of spalting, it's a nice wood to turn. It's a lovely wood to turn, but sometimes it can be a bit dry and a bit what we call punky, a bit dry and flaky. So sometimes it's not the best wood to turn, but without a shadow of a doubt, the end result at the end, when you spend time on finishing, etc., it is worth it, because it can be really stunning. Well, there we are. Leona, when she started turning, she knew no different. It's a good wood to learn on, because you have to give nice cuts to it. Light cuts, sharp tools to get a good finish off the tool. So it is as good as any other, if you like. I personally, when I started, I loved turning cherry, because if you get some nice cherry, that really does turn nicely. But Deborah, Beech is excellent. Leave the spalted till later, though. Yes, I would agree with that, Pete. Beech on its own, when I say on its own, unspalted beech is a really nice wood to turn, and you've got some really nice natural figure in there without the spalting. So it's a good wood to turn. The first was the second half the last time, and the government has made the decision that they would have been grafted at half over the data. All right, okay. I've missed what that's about. David Arnold, Mike, what sanding sealer do I use? I use Hampshire Sheen pre-thinned. I've been using that for a number of years now, and it's a cellulose pre-thinned sanding sealer. Nigel, looks a great piece so far, Mike, great video. Thank you very much, Nigel, I appreciate that. There's time for me to mess it up, mate. Robert Wilson, Mike, I'm trying to find out to use the right-hand side of the bowl gouge whenever you are cutting to the right, and obviously the left-hand side when you're cutting left. If you mean a push cut, if you're pushing a push cut in a bowl, you are cutting basically just to the left of the nose. If you're cutting the inside of a bowl, and if you're cutting the outside of a bowl, depending whether you're going from base to middle or end to middle, you will use the right hand side if you're going from right to left, and if you're going left to right, you will use the left side. Andy Clanetty, pops firewood green, looking good so far, thank you very much. Mike Stratton, I've got you on the tablet and Pat Carrot on the laptop, Mike. You're just too greedy, Michael, that's your trouble. I'm going to quickly just go to the break, and I think you know why. Just having a quick vape. Mark Pritchard has asked, will I do live shows when I'm back at work? I sincerely hope so. I'm not going to be doing it for at least 3 weeks now, because I'm going on holiday in a short while for a couple of weeks. But I intend, that's why I wanted Sundays, because I do work Sundays when I'm back at work, but not every Sunday. So there's more chance of me sort of every alternate Sunday doing a live. So yes, I do intend to do them, but they won't be as, well, they're not frequent now, are they? Every 2 weeks I do them, basically, if I can. Justin Clark, I did my first eccentric, oh good man, and you Spalted Beech, probably not the best choice of timber for my first eccentric goblet. Justin Clark said he's done an off-centre eccentric goblet, well done mate. No, I would agree that Spalted Beech possibly isn't the best to use. Beech is fine, any solid wood if you like, but it's, you know, you can get away with it. It's just, it's more likely not to withhold the forces when you're off axis, but well done. Did you enjoy turning it, Justin? The thing is with spalting, for the newer turner as well, basically, Billy Burt, good evening. How are you, Billy? Nice to see you. The thing with spalting is it is basically fungus, and it's effectively eating away at the wood, and the idea, I suppose, is, well, not suppose, the idea is to catch the spalting at the right time before the wood starts to degrade too much. That's the ideal scenario. Alan Russell just bought a Stratos FU230 from Hope. Oh, Alan, you'll love it. I love mine, I didn't need the XL, but you know, at my age, if I didn't take the plunger, I wouldn't be around long enough to get one, so I decided I'd buy one of these. But yeah, the FU230 is a brilliant lathe, it really is. Are you okay, Billy? Bob Amarant, hello, how are you, Bob? Nice to see you, sir. Yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, I don't do them very often, and I have to be honest, I've done quite a lot of eccentric turning, but I need to do a few practice runs first. Because it's surprising, if you just alter the angle very slightly, you alter the angle of the knuckle and the whole look of the piece, you know. Right, okay, I think we'll get on. So, I'm still getting used to this Stream Deck here. Still me face, tailstock overhead, there we go. Okay, so we can see that obviously, basically, the shape is there. Now what I'm going to do is possibly just do a little bit of fine tuning there, but essentially it's there. So all that is left to be done, you see we've got little wormholes here and everything. All is left to be done then is to sand, seal and deliver. Sand, seal and wax. And if we have time, which I'm sure we will, we'll use Yorkshire grit as well. There's actually not an awful lot. I'll just get a fresh edge on my 1/2 inch spindle gauge, or fresher. There's just a little bit of fine tuning and then we're down to sanding. Just a little ridge there, so just feather into the cut and feather out of it basically, just to get rid of that little ridge. And there's one little ridge there as well. Nothing major. I think that is it. So I'll just do a little cleaning cut across the base here. Now another thing when you do a goblet, again it's all personal. I never like to see the base wider than the diameter of the bowl. This is a clumpy looking goblet anyway, but having said that, it still has to be in proportion to my eye, and I'm not arty-farty like some of the guys watching tonight, believe me. So basically that's it, and when I part this off I might go a little bit thinner than the guideline I had on here. So what we've got to do now is quickly sand up. So I will put the extractor on. Now I can remove the tennis ball now, not that I needed it, as I said, it wasn't essential, but when you can, I keep saying for the newer turner, but I mean obviously that's important for the newer guys. When you can bring up tailstock support, always use it when you can, and you get into the habit of it then. So we've got a nice sturdy piece here, it's not going to be rocking or flexing, so we don't need to have that up. So I can do the rim and do all the sanding that I need to do. Now I'm going to start with 180, and I think that's going to be enough, and I'll just give you a little tip. Turn the speed down, get rid of your tool rest. Okay, so we're going to start with 180. Just nice, light pressure, even pressure. Now when you're turning or sanding anything highly figured and spalted, you still have to obviously use an even pressure with each grit, but because it's so highly spalted and that, you don't have to necessarily do what I'm going to say now when I've done this first bit here. Now if you've got anything that you need to just refine, now's the time to do it, because once you get to the finer grits, all you're doing is getting rid of the marks you've made with, in this case, the 180. Now normally what I would do on a spindle, let's turn that down, what I would normally do on a spindle is sand by hand with the grain, like this, like you would with a pen, any spindle, and what that does is get rid of any radial marks. But as I say, it's not quite as important on a spalted piece because you can hardly see it anyway. But even on the bowl, just go round, turn it by hand, and just go with the same pressure that you use to sand it with the lathe moving, spinning rather. You just go around with the grain. Now I haven't spent enough time on this bowl, so I've got to spend a little bit more time on it because there's a couple of little ridges I want to get rid of. That's talking, you see. Too eager to get to the bit about sanding with the grain along the piece. And again, for the newer turner, don't get hung up about sanding. And I always use this as an example. One of the finest turners in the world is a young lady called Cindy Drozda. And Cindy is known for her very fine work on finials and fine boxes and hollow forms. She is the high priestess of fine work, apart from Joseph, of course. I saw a live demo of hers about 2 months ago, and she said that for a piece that is going to be on show in a gallery, and she wanted it to be representative of the finest work she could do, she could spend up to 2 hours delicately sanding a finial to get it to the exact proportions that she was happy with. So again, you newer turners out there, don't sand to death with pressure. If you spend half an hour getting it exactly as you want with abrasive, there is no problem in doing that at all. Because don't forget, if you're going to be doing craft fairs and selling something to people, putting stuff on Etsy or on your website, whatever, 95% of people, unless they're wood turners of course, don't care how you got to the end product. All they're interested in is what they see in front of them. How you got there is really of very little interest to them. So remember that. It's only you know what you've done. If you like hollowing out with a scraper, good luck to you. You carry on with the scraper as long as you get the exact finish that you're looking for. That's okay in my book. And if somebody disagrees with me, that's fine, but that's my opinion. So okay, we've done 180. Now we'll go to 240. I'm okay for time because it's only been just over an hour. But again, as I say with demos, it's basically methodology. It's the method that I try to get across, not so much the quality of the finish, which is very easy to say, isn't it? Eh? I mean, I never have been a speed merchant because time is not crucial when I'm turning. It's my hobby, it's my relaxation. Well, sometimes it is. So nothing is time critical, you know. And if you remember that, it doesn't matter if Fred Bloggs down the road does a bowl in 20 minutes and it takes you 2 hours. It doesn't matter. Fred Bloggs has been honing his skills most probably for 25-30 years, and he makes a living out of turning bowls. So yes, he needs to turn them not just efficiently, he needs to turn them efficiently and come up with a saleable item at the end of it. Okay, so that's 240. So the next stage, I can now get rid of this respirator. The next stage in the method that I use is sealer, Yorkshire grit, and in this case Hampshire sheen, wax. And that is my preferred finish. I always have preferred a wax finish because I think it brings out the best in wood. That's just me. I'm not a great fan of high gloss finishes. Just got a quick drink. I've got time. It's wonderful. I am in awe of some of the glass-like finishes that are achievable. But having said that, wood was never meant to be like glass, and I personally prefer as natural a finish as you can get. And the one joy of working with Spalted anything, you can see a few bug holes there, but never mind, is look at that grain, how that comes out, and that's just with the sanding sealer. And this gives me so much pleasure, it really does, seeing what Mother Nature can do. And please don't believe that I'm an old-fashioned, and I don't like to see people colouring wood. Yes, I do. I mean, I don't like colouring wood myself very much, but that's just a personal thing. But I still can appreciate that colouring done tastefully and with knowledge can enhance a piece. I do know that. It just doesn't do an awful lot for me actually doing it. It's quite fun chucking paint onto anything really, a bit like being a kid in it in school. But I get more pleasure personally from natural wood, and that's just a personal thing. I mean, if Wayne is still on, Wayne the Woodturner, some of the phenomenal stuff he does with colour, Martin Saban-Smith, just to name two. I mean, colour, if applied properly, can really be an enhancement, if you like, to your work. But it's not for me. It's like segmenting. I'm always in awe of people. Some of the fantastic pieces people produce segmenting, I just personally find it boring, and that's just me. Doesn't mean to say nobody should do it. It's just not for me, you know. And life's too short to pursue things you don't enjoy. Now you see, I don't know if the camera will pick that up, there's a little bug hole there. Well, that's really punky. Now normally what I would do, I might even fill that with a little bit of CA and coffee ground or something, just to fill that little hole in there. But on this occasion, it's a demo. There's another one there, but that's already got black on it, so that's fine. But if you use a little bit of thin CA with a tiny little bit of coffee ground, I sometimes just use instant coffee granules and powder it in there, and that does a good job. Okay, we'll just let that dry off for a minute, and then we'll carry on with the next stage, which is the Yorkshire grit. I've come off here, Adrian Olsen. What about Ed's wood painting, Mike? You didn't mention Ed. Sorry, yes, didn't I mention Ed? Wayne the Woodturner, Martin Stevenson, and of course Ed Oliver. Sorry, I do apologise, Ed. I wasn't really concentrating on what I was saying, but you know, all you guys. I mean, Gary Lowe, you know, Pat Carroll, brilliant. But it's not for me. Retired Ilminster, I tend to use a coat of Howard's feed and wax before the sealer to bring the colour grain out. To be honest with you, Retired of Ilminster, I don't, well, each to his own. I think the sanding sealer, as soon as you apply anything onto wood, it's got to darken it and it's going to enhance anything. But if that works for you, that's great, you know. Right, so what we do now that that's dried, Yorkshire grit. So just apply it quite liberally, but not excessively, I think is the way to say it. And look, you can see a shine coming up already. And as I explained, what Yorkshire grit does, it breaks down, and I stopped sanding at 240, and it negates the need to sand with the finer grits, so that you don't have the fine dust particles in your workshop. And it's not just for the fact if you haven't got adequate respiratory or extraction. That is a big plus, obviously, but it also, when applied correctly, gives a really superb base for your final finish, your wax to go on or whatever on top. And it is very slightly a wood filler. I don't mean big cracks, and not big holes like this, but little tiny hairline cracks and stuff. It tends to fill those quite nicely as well. Okay, so again, starting off mainly to stop it spitting up at you at around 500 revs to start with, and just work it in. And all you're doing is burnishing it, and use the same bit of paper towel that you applied it with, and already you can start to see, I mean, it's a secret recipe, but I do know there's rotten stone and mineral oil in there, and I'm not sure beeswax, I'm not sure the ingredients because Glyn never tells anybody, but nevertheless, it basically your aim or your mission is to completely get rid of any grit that is there, which is slowly breaking down and taking the place of your finer grits of abrasive. So apart from the fact that you will feel it become slicker as the abrasive particles break down, you will also see, now you can see there is obviously residue because we applied it. So you take a clean piece of paper towel and turn the speed up and a bit more pressure now. And the whole idea, as I keep saying, is to break it down. Getting all the little bits in the corners and the edges. And what will happen is, you can see there now, there's still a bit there, but it's not as much as before. And it's like with anything else, if you're prepared to spend the time on it, you'll reap the benefit and get the results that you are capable, the product is capable of giving you. But if you rush it, and I think I might have said this already on this live stream, a lot of people will spend a lot of time turning a piece, and I'm the other way around on this. When I've rushed the piece, will take a long time overturning and getting it as good as they can off the tool, and then rush the finishing, and you've got a terrible surface. And it goes back to, as I said before, that people who are looking at or buying or potentially buying your piece, they're not interested how long it's taken you, and they're not interested that, oh well, it might have looked good before you put a finish on it, but it certainly doesn't look good now. They're not interested in that. It's just the final piece. So the newer turners out there, don't rush the finishing process, whichever it is that you use. Don't rush it like I'm doing now. So do as I say, not as I do. It's becoming really slick now, and there's virtually nothing coming off there at all now, so it's done its job. Just give it another little whacker. Yeah, clean as a whistle. So Yorkshire grit has done its job. Now again, wait for a couple of minutes. You can feel it. If it's a bit tacky, it's not ready. Leave it just for a couple of minutes before you apply your final finish. In this case, as I say, it's going to be a wax, and it will pay dividends. I had a few people ask me questions when I was at Maker Central a couple of years ago. Well, last year was it? 2018, was it? 2018, I don't know, 2019, whatever. And saying they couldn't get a good, you know, they didn't get the shine, etc., etc. And it's basically not waiting for things to just go off that little bit more and rushing the process. And it does pay dividends. It's a little bit different with a demo because obviously it's time critical. But it's only been an hour and 20 minutes, so I'll indulge myself, if you like. Come back over here for a minute and say hello to you all again. And as I say, to people that I haven't said hello and welcome to, hello and welcome. It's difficult to see what I'm, it's definitely difficult enough to see what I'm turning, let alone look at the chat at the same time. Can you use Yorkshire grit on flat work? Yes, I believe you can. I've never done it, but obviously a bit more elbow grease is needed. But yes, you can. Yeah, car headlights, funny enough, the microfine that's this, which is very much finer than the original Yorkshire grit, is brilliant for car headlights. But apart from that, resins and things, I very rarely use it. I use it on hardwood, and it does give that extra smooth surface. If you want to, you know, get really anal about it, then. But it's great on wood, but it is really, really good on resin. And I don't do resin. Nigel was going to say something, he didn't agree with it, so he retracted his message. Ah, Bruce, how are you? How are you, mate? Bruce, Jordan Woodworks, nice to see you. Yes, as the Dutch turner said, microphone is great for resin. I actually did, what did I can't remember, I did a little bowl out of some, I think it was a Moranti, a couple of days ago for my wife, just a little trinket bowl. And I used the microphone on it, and it really did, it was smooth as a baby's bum. There we go. Billy Burt has said he's used Yorkshire grit on flat work, it works just fine. A power buffer. If you have a dedicated buffer for Yorkshire grit on your drill or on your buffing machine, all you've got to do is, it's basically like T-cut, if you like. It just has to be rubbed and rubbed and rubbed until all the abrasive particles have disappeared. That's a pleasure, Fenrica. Cheers, Billy, says Glyn. So Glyn is happy that Billy has said yes, it's great on flat work. Di Prout, hello Di. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, you are Di Prout saying it's a great product, and he's got a good friend as well. Well, I'm absolutely amazed, and I'm so grateful. I mean, 412 viewers on a Sunday night. Buster West, thank you, sir. You are an absolute gentleman. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, what I'll do now, we'll go back to the overhead. I keep on wanting to use my mouse, but I've got to use my Stream Deck. I don't have to, but I'm going to. Okay, we'll go to the overhead, and we'll buff. We'll put the wax on again before getting ahead of myself and put the wax on yet. So the Yorkshire grit is now ready to receive. So again, with the wax, I like to put it on goblets and stuff by hand. Well, I say by hand, without the lathe moving. You can, you know, you can apply it with the lathe moving if you wish, if you prefer. It's just something I prefer to do. And again, like anything else, you don't want loads and loads of wax on your work. 3 or 4 coats, if you want, are better than one big splodge of wax. And remember that if you apply too much pressure, you're going to cause streaks and you'll get ridges. And if you do that, the only way to get rid of them is to sand back and start again. So you don't want loads of wax on the surface. Now I can turn him on just at about 500 revs, something like that, just to work it in. I'm not burnishing to a final finish here. I'm just trying to make it as even as I possibly can over the piece, over the surface, so as not to create any high points of wax effectively. The same as with the Yorkshire grit, you know, I mean, if you see streaks when you're buffing out your Yorkshire grit, it's not ready, because it's still got little bits in there that need to be attended to. And I will reiterate for those that have just come or just look at it, this is a chunky goblet, but the idea of turning something like this is to show my reasoning behind highly figured wood having, in my opinion, more visual presence with a thicker, more chunky design, because it just oozes spalting here. Look at that. And if you can imagine, if that stem was down to say 5 mil or 4, 5 to 6 mil, A lot of that spalting, I don't think on this particular piece it would do, but it would certainly be not as impressive because it wouldn't be so much there. But quite often spalting won't go to the very centre of your blank anyway, so you lose it. So you'd have the spalting here, the spalting on your base, and the middle might well just be a creamy colour with the odd bit of light brown. And it seems such a waste, you know, in my opinion. Again, my opinion, but each to his own, you know.